Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Mayapur. My name is Nanda Das. This is our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we have a very special topic in front of us again. We want to speak about the state of mind of the residents of Vrindavan. So before we begin, we'll say a few prayers. Gora Graganya Gana Gota Goloruharam Gauranga Buddhatama Gopyada Kopa Vriksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshika Varam Satatamari Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachi Chachiya Dileka Kola Kahe Premananda Emona Goranga Hridoya Dadiya Bola Vacha Goranga Kaha Goranga Laha Gorangera Namure Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Sevaya Mara Pranare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Good morning, dear devotees. This is our 38th session. Meeting in Kuruksetra, and the fourth part of Uddhava meets Nanda Yashoda, and today we're calling this the Vrindavan state of mind. So just to review a little bit, in our previous sessions, we heard about Uddhava arriving in Vrindavan, and the words that Nanda Maharaj spoke to him, and how Nanda was speaking Parokshava. Apparently he's asking about Vasudeva and Devaki, but really he's expressing the feeling of his heart. And it's not that when they speak this way, it's not that it's a calculated thing, but it's just something automatically that arises in their heart. And they're not even thinking about it, but the feelings in their heart are so intense, they just naturally come out. So he then began to speak about the rivers and mountains and places of Vrindavan, and Uddhava had told him that, why don't you just go outside, get your mind off of things, you'll forget about Krishna. And Nanda Maharaj said, no, it's worse. And Nanda Kishore Goswami in his Vrindavan Lilamrita, he sings, Rama Krishna Donhar Kare Pai Rama Jaina Ei Mata Gyana Hoy Katana Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Nanda Maharaj told Uddhava that Rama Krishna Donhara Pai Rama Jaina, when we see these rivers and mountains and things, we remember Krishna and Balaram. And we think that we've attained them. And then, reading from the 46th chapter, the 10th canto, a verse we spoke on in our last session, just to review it, text 26, Nanda Maharaj tells Uddhava Pralambo Diniko Rishtas Trinavarto Bakadaya Daitya Surasura Jito Hatta Yeneha Leelaya. That here in Vrindavan, Krishna and Balaram, they destroyed so many demons like Pralambasura, Dhenukasura, Rishtasura, Trinavarta, Bakasura. And then we spoke last session about Daitya Sura Sura Jito. Sura Sura Jito. How Krishna defeated the Suras, the demigods, and the demons. And how that was referring to personalities like Indra and Brahma and Varuna, how Krishna had defeated them. So we'll go on to text number 27. Shukadeva Goswami speaks. He says, Iti samsmitya samsmitya. This is actually something we covered in our last session. I want to just go further into it. Iti samsmitya samsmitya Nanda Krishnanu di atyukanto bhavat tushnim prema prasada vivala. Shukadeva Goswami says that when he's speaking about Nanda Maharaj, he says that iti samsmitya samsmitya. Very auspicious time to come in. We remember them and they come in. Iti samsmitya samsmitya. Again and again. We spoke about this in our last session. Govinda Vallabha made a great comment. That what is a combination of these two words, smriti, to remember, and samyak. When you put the two together, samyak means complete. Samsmitya. Complete means always. Complete means that all the Brijbasis are remembering like this. And indirectly then this indicates to us that we should also come together with Vaishnavas who are remembering from their heart, like the Brijbasis. And Samyak Smitya also means with love. And we misquoted last time Govinda Vallabha. It wasn't from Raghunath Das Goswami's writings. There's a verse in the Hari Bhakti Vilas that says, Pratigya Tava Govinda Name Bhakta Pranashiti. Pratigya Tava Govinda. Remembering Krishna's promise. Name Bhakta Pranashiti. Or Krishna's promise, we should say. Name Bhakta Pranashiti. My devotee will never perish. Iti samsmitya samsmitya pranam samdarayam yam. That's my life. This is part of the Aparada Bhanjana Stotra, the prayers that the devotees pray to become free from offenses. So he says that Nanda Maharaj became Krishnanu di. His mind became completely absorbed in Krishna, ati ukanta. And he became extremely anxious at that time. Bhavatushnyam. And then he became stunned. And he couldn't say anything more. So let's read a little bit here, a little bit from our Acharya's commentaries on this. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshani comments on this verse that Nanda Maharaj's mind was spontaneously attracted to Krishna. And iti samsmitya, again and again. Here he defines the word sam as again and again. Nanda Maharaj remembered the sweetness and at the same time Krishna's sweetness and Krishna's power. And how Krishna protected him. And he's asking Uddhava, so why didn't he protect us now? Previously he protected us from that forest fire, which we weren't really sure. Maybe that was sent by one of Kamsa's chelas, right after Krishna defeated Kaliya. And it was, by that time it was late at night and we were all exhausted due to emotions. We decided just to spend the night there on the bank of the Jamuna River. And they made different circles, keeping Krishna in the center. And then this great terrible fire came up. And Krishna saved us from that fire. But why doesn't he save us from this fire? This Vipralamba Agni, this Vipralamba Dhavanala, this great forest fire of separation. And Jiva Goswami says, when Nanda Maharaj began speaking like this, at first he couldn't even speak directly about Krishna. And so it was indirect, parokshavad. And he was speaking about Vasudeva and Devaki. But then as he started remembering the sweetness of Krishna in Vrindavan, then he became all choked up. So then again, he started speaking about the demons to try to control his feelings of ecstasy. But then that force of prema just overwhelmed him. And tears began to flow down. And he became choked up and he became silent and couldn't speak. And Jiva says that some smritya is repeated to show that he couldn't control himself. As we spoke in our last session, the gopis also, they're saying, you're telling us, Krishna, to become yogis and meditate. We can't do that. It doesn't work for us. Because to be a yogi means you have to be peaceful. And we're not peaceful at all. Because we can't stop thinking about you. So in a similar way, Jiva Goswami says that some smritya is repeated here to show that even if he wanted, Nanda Maharaj couldn't stop thinking of Krishna. It's such a wonderful thing. Even if we want to, we can't think of Krishna. We try very hard, but we can't think of Krishna. But Nanda Maharaj can't stop thinking of Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Sarita Darshan, he comments that Nanda Maharaj, when he remembered the Aishvarya, or the opulence of Krishna, it overwhelmed Nanda Maharaj. And this is a very interesting thing, as we mentioned in our last session, and we're going to dedicate this session to this thing, to this topic. We're going to speak something about the state of mind of Vrindavan. Very difficult thing to understand. Contemplate this. Any relationship means that your friend, your co-worker, your brother, your sister, your wife, your husband, your children, your parents, everybody wants you to understand their mood, their understanding. We should think about that. That's what love means. This is the meaning of bhakti, that we should try to contemplate the feelings of the associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. So, Nanda Maharaj, Vishwanath says, was thinking to himself, he says, Ami Durbhagya, I'm very, very unfortunate. Due to that misfortune, I've been separated from my son, who's the ocean of wonderful qualities. And Nanda Maharaj's attachment to Krishna is so great that even when he appreciates Krishna's power, it doesn't weaken his feelings like it does with Vasudeva. When Vasudeva and Devaki think of Krishna being Bhagavan, as in the prison of Kamsa, when Krishna appeared as Vasudeva there, with a four-armed feature, they fell down on the ground and began to offer prayers. But there's no description of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj ever offering prayers. Rather, Kavi Karnapur and his Nanda Vrindavan Champu, he says that when Krishna was born, Mother Yashoda was asleep. I've never heard of a woman sleeping through the birth before. But it was such a gentle birth, she was just asleep. And when she woke up, there's this beautiful baby next to her. And he was covered with the amniotic fluid, the fluid from the womb of Mother Yashoda. Krishna is the son of Yashoda. And Mother Yashoda looked over at that beautiful baby, who was like a brilliant blue sapphire. And when Mother Yashoda saw him, and the amniotic fluid was covering his body, she saw her own reflection in Krishna's body. And Mother Yashoda became afraid. When Vasudeva Krishna appeared in the prison of Kamsa, Vasudeva and Devaki became afraid also, for different reasons. One, because, oh my God, this is my God. This is him, he's right here. This is really awesome. And also they were worried that Kamsa is going to do something bad. Their feelings were mixed. But when Yashoda saw her reflection in the body of Krishna, she became very disturbed. Ah, it's a witch. Go away, leave my baby alone, leave my child alone. There's a kind of madness that the residents of Vrindavan have. And so we see, as we described a little bit in our last session, that when Krishna sometimes, and this topic will come up again in the next chapter of the Bhagavatam, the 47th chapter of the Brahma Gita, and how the gopis are criticizing Krishna, and how they're also speaking sometimes about the opulence of Krishna. Krishna sometimes shows his opulence in Vrindavan. But as we described in our last session, Aishvarya Priti Sankuchita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes that generally opulence makes love shrink, and we spoke a little about Bill Gates and like that. But in the case of the residents of Vrindavan, and as we point in the future, as in the case in Kuruksetra, when the residents of Vrindavan were there, when they saw Krishna with all that opulence, it didn't decrease their love, it increased their love. Nanda Maharaj's mind was firmly attached to Krishna. And in this way, this prema prasada vivala, Shukadeva Goswami says, he became overwhelmed with love. And Uddhava, in the presence of Nanda Maharaj, his love was just oceanic. It was just like, Vishwanath says, it was like Agastya Muni, who swallowed the whole ocean. So, in that ocean of love, what is the significance of an ocean of Aishvarya? It becomes very, very insignificant. Just like Agastya Muni drank the ocean like it was one drop of water. And so for Nanda Maharaj, that ocean of Aishvarya becomes very, very insignificant. Jiva Goswami, in the 10th chapter, the Uttarakanda of Gopal Champu, speaks about how sometimes Nanda Maharaj understands Krishna's position as Bhagavan. He says, Apitu Sura Muninam Jyayam Ityaha Gargaha. That Uddhava said to Nanda Maharaj, first of all, he said that these two boys, they're not ordinary persons. Sura Muninam Jyayam, that Garga Muni, Ityaha Garga, Garga Muni said that the Devatas, they're worshipping them in their meditation. Sura Muninam Jyayam. And Uddhava told Nanda Maharaj, you and I both, we can understand Krishna's great power. And then Nanda Maharaj replies, Viryam yajyapi tashyatadishamatapyantas tume mardavam grinat kevalam ardra bhavam ayate kuryam kim evam vadam kante netra yugecha rodana jalam Vibrad Brajadishvara Kim Vaktum Bhatta Shakyatam Hari Hari Svasa Varodam Dade. Nanda Maharaj replied to this, okay, it's true. Sometimes Krishna, he shows his viryam yadyapi. Yeah, it's true. Sometimes Krishna shows his opulence like this to indicate that he's Bhagavan. He says, but you know what? Grinat kevalam ardrabhavam ayate kuryam kimevam vadam. I can't think of him in any other way but as a tiny child. That's the only way I can think of him. And Nanda Maharaj then became choked up. Kante netu yuge cha rodana jalam. And rodana jalam, the tears began to flow down. And Kante, his voice became choked up. He said, what can I do? And Nanda Maharaj then couldn't say anything further. In the 28th verse, next verse of the 46th chapter, 10th canto, Shukadeva Goswami is describing the position of Yashoda. Yashoda varnyamanani putrasya charitani cha Shinvantya Shruni Avishrakshitit, Ashrun Avas Rakshit Sneha Snuta Payodara. When Mother Yashoda, who's sitting there very innocently, I'm just a housewife, all these big important men are having this discussion, I'm just a little lady who's just sitting off to the side, and she's listening very, very attentively to what her husband's saying and what Uddhava is saying. And Mother Yashoda, she doesn't at first have anything to say, but she speaks in another way. The tears just start pouring out of her eyes, and the milk just starts coming out from her breasts, out of intense love. From the very day that Krishna had left from Mathura, Mother Yashoda had been counseled. She went to so many psychiatrists and counselors. And Vrindavan, I'm going crazy. I can't stop thinking of my son. So many people counseled her and consoled her. Hundreds of different people, hundreds of different men. But Mother Yashoda, all that she could see in her unmadana means her divine madness, was the face of her Gopal. And Mother Yashoda, she wouldn't see anything or anyone else, and she just cried constantly. And in this way, she couldn't recognize Uddhava. She didn't even see him looking like her Gopal. She couldn't treat him with any parental affection. She couldn't ask him any questions. She couldn't give any message for Krishna. She's just overwhelmed with love for Krishna. She's just gone. She's finished. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshan explains that although Yashoda was listening to all this and they're saying that Krishna and Balaram were the best of the devatas, she couldn't stop her conception, her love for them as her son. Just like a mother, if Mr. Trump's mother hears about, he won the election, he didn't win the election this time, but she hears he won the election and he became the president. She, isn't that sweet, my boo-boo? He won the election. She thinks of him as her boo-boo or whatever. She has some affectionate name like that. And so this is like Mother Yashoda. And so this verse describes Putrasya Charitani, that these descriptions of Krishna's activities of showing her power, Mother Yashoda could only think about his sweetness. And Vishwanath explains similar thing we were just saying, how Nanda Maharaj managed to control himself by the strength of his gravity. And then he was able to give proper respect to Uddhava as a guest, and then he could actually look at him directly and recognize him and ask about his well-being and Krishna's qualities. But Mother Yashoda, she was drowning in the whirlpools, Jiva Goswami, Vishnu says, of her ocean of unsteadiness. And she couldn't offer any hospitality to Uddhava. This, he says, it's indirectly expressed in this verse. And from the day that Krishna left Vrindavan for Mathura, Mother Yashoda, tears were flowing constantly, there it is, from her eyes, and milk was dripping from her breasts. And although everybody's counseling her and saying things, Mother Yashoda would just tell everybody, they're telling her, just take a deep breath, practice pranayama, put your fingers together like this, click your fingers together, that helps you with the stress. Mother Yashoda, leave me alone. I just want to see my Gopal. That's all that she could say. She was just closing her eyes, and her clothes were constantly soaking wet from her tears. This is the nature of Mother Yashoda. And this is the nature of Krishna. And this is what Krishna wants to teach Uddhava. This is the first school of Braj Prem. Uddhava is the first student. And he's sending Uddhava to learn from Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. Externally, it seems like Uddhava is the teacher, Uddhava is the messenger. And there's something of that there. But Krishna has also another purpose. He wants to teach Uddhava the nature of the love of Vrindavan. And as we mentioned, I think in our last session, this is the most important, the most mysterious subject in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which previously had never been explained before. How is it that Krishna leaves Vrindavan? If he really loves the Brijvasis, and it certainly seems so when we read the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters of the Rasa Leela, and how Krishna's dancing with the gopis and their exchanges. We hear about how Mother Yashoda ties Krishna up with a rope, with her love. We hear about the intense love of the residents of Vrindavan. But why did he leave? So this is very intimately connected with Gaura Leela. And so I'd like to turn now, at this point, to Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Adi Leela chapter 3, which is a little bit, in the first few chapters of Adi Leela, especially chapters 2, 3, and 4, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is unpacking the first 14 verses that he gives in Adi Leela chapter 1, the Mangalacharna verses, which also describe the Vastu Nirdesh, the subject matter that's being spoken about, and speaks about some, what is this, the subject matter, what is the benefit that you get by hearing this topic, and he's also offering obeisances. So in that third chapter, he explains how Krishna is enjoying his pastimes as long as he wants, and then he disappears. But after Krishna disappears from this world, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gives us a window into Krishna's mind. And what is Krishna thinking? Chirakala nahi kori prema bhakti dan, bhakti vina jagatera nahi avastan. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Chirakala nahi kori prema bhakti dan. He was thinking, Chirakala, it's been a long time. Nahi kori prema bhakti dan, since I've given this braj bhakti, since I've given this ecstatic prem bhakti. And bhakti vina jagatira nahi avashtan. This is a purport, I won't say much more than this, but this is a purport to the Gora Gayatri mantra. You can unpack that yourself and think about it. Bhakti vina jagatira nahi avashtan. That without this prem bhakti, this universe couldn't exist. Srila Prabhupada comments in his purport, the Lord very seldomly awards pure transcendental love. But without such pure love of God, which is free from all fruitive activities and empiric speculation, one cannot achieve perfection in life. Very powerful statement from Srila Prabhupada. It's not just that if you practice Varnashram Dharma and you become a Paka Brahman, you have a nice community, you become self-sufficient, you do nice cow protection. That's not sufficient. It's not even sufficient if you go back to Godhead, if you get liberation. Prabhupada is saying that the Lord very seldomly awards pure transcendental love, but without such pure love of God, one cannot achieve perfection in life. And Kaviraj Goswami goes on to explain the mood of Krishna. Shakala jagati more kore bidi. Excuse me. Shakala jagati more kore bidi bhakti. Bidi bhakti vraja bhava paite nahi shakti. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Krishna says, you know what it's like trying to be God? It's not so easy. Shakala jagati more kore bidi bhakti. Everybody, everywhere, they're always worshipping me according to all the Vidi Bhakti, according to scriptural injunctions. But Vidi Bhakti Braja Bhava Paiti Nahi Shakti. He says, but if you follow that Vidi Bhakti, the Vidi Bhakti, you can't attain Braja Bhava Paiti Nahi Shakti. You can't get that power, that love of Vrindavan. And then he speaks more about that power. Aishvarya Jnanete Shaba Jagata Nishrita Aishvarya Sitili Preme Nahi Mora Prita Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. He says Aishvarya Jnanete Shaba Jagata Nishrita. Everybody's feelings for me, all the different devotees in the temples and the mosques and the churches all over the world, their understanding of me is mixed with this Aishvarya. He's a creator, he's a destroyer, and he's an angry person, the God of the Old Testament. And he's going to hit you with a lightning bolt if you're not good. It's kind of like Santa Claus. They tell the children if you're not good, Santa Claus will put coal in your stocking. So they tell the children, you should be very, very good. So he says then that Aishvarya Sitili Premi Nahi Mora Krita, that this love which is made weak by this opulence, it doesn't attract me, Krishna says. It's boring. How would you like, you go to school and someone comes to you one day and says, hi, will you be my friend? Sure. Because I'm really afraid of you. I want to be your friend because you're just so super intelligent, much, much greater than me, and you're so much wealthier than me, and you're so stronger than me, and you might beat me up. So I'd like to be your friend. Is that like, oh wow, that's so sweet. Yeah, that's not nice. Huh? It's a natural thing. And Krishna himself's feeling, what is this business? Everybody's worshiping me like this and scared of me. Chatuta shlokera arta e kailasaya prema nama pracharita e avatar. Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, He says, I was explaining already, Kaviraj Goswami says, some of these Mangalacharna verses, and how the purpose of this avatar is prema nama pracharite, to come and to spread the chanting of the holy name with this love of God. Prema nama pracharite, not just Sudanam, but prema nam, to understand pure love of God. Satya hetu kintu eho bahiranga ara eka hetu shuna achi antaranga. Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Okay, so Kaviraj Goswami says, yeah, it's to establish the Sankirtan movement. And he says, Satya e hetu. This is true. Satya, it's a fact. Huh? E hetu, this is the cause. But kintu eho bahiranga. He said, this is just external. Ara eka hetu. There's another reason. Suru ache antaranga. Please listen to this. This is the confidential antaranga karn. We spoke about the bahiranga karn. The external reason is to give ecstatic love of God to everyone. That's external. But there's also an antaranga hetu, an antaranga karn, an internal cause. And Srila Prabhupada comments in his purport. He says, in the 3rd chapter, 4th verse, it has been clearly said that Lord Chaitanya appeared in order to distribute love of Krishna and the chanting of his transcendental holy name, Hare Krishna. That was the secondary purpose of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. The real reason is different, as we shall see in this chapter. So this was in Adi Lila chapter 4. And the next verse goes on to describe. Kaviraj Goswami begins to speak then, giving us some understanding of this internal purpose. This is such an important thing. This is the jewel of our sampradaya. Gaudiya Vaishnavism doesn't mean opening vegetarian restaurants and teaching about reincarnation. There's so many people who do that, and many of them are not even saintly persons. Some of them may be atheists, more or less, but they believe something, some reincarnation, but they don't believe in God. Or you might be a member of the Sri Sampradaya, or the Nimbarka Sampradaya, or some other Vaishnava Sampradaya. What is the special Vaishishta, the special quality of our Chaitanya Sampradaya? Kaviraj Goswami is explaining. Huvejina Pritivira Bhara Hari Bhare Krishna Avatina Hoila Shastri Te Prachare Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare. He says that Shastri Te Prachare. The Shastras, they're all preaching. They're doing this prachar. Prabhupada translates prachar here as proclaiming, telling. It does not mean the same as preaching. Prabhupada sometimes said preaching. He used that word quite a lot because our English vocabulary is not so good. But preaching has different meanings. And so how many times have you told somebody, look, don't preach to me, okay? Preaching also means like that. But prachar here means to proclaim. Prachar means to nourish. It's a synonym of vardhana, to nourish, to share with someone. And what are they sharing? Purve Jaina Prativira Bhara Haribari. That previously the Shastras are saying that Krishna came, Krishna avatar, to deliver the planet. And that's why he came. And indirectly we're saying, because we're all very, very important. That's the only reason that God exists. Sometimes, it's an interesting exercise. We do this with small children. I don't know, up until they're about 10 years old or 12 years old. And if they're like 5 to 8 years old, I ask them sometimes, who washes your clothes? And they say, I don't know. This kind of happens, you know. and you do that in front of the mother's like rolling her eyes in her head. Because the kid doesn't even think about it. And a lot of times we don't really even think about it until we have children of our own. And then our mother's laughing at us. Now you get to experience what I was experiencing. So sometimes we're thinking in the same way. We're so self-centered. We think the clothes just get washed. That's why God created Mother to cook for me and wash my clothes and do everything. That's just what she does. She must like doing it because I'm the most important person there is, right? Children, sometimes they think like this. And so in a similar way, the conditioned souls in this material world, sometimes they're thinking, that's God's purpose. God exists just to please me. And he's a baker, he has a big bakery in the sky, and sometimes he makes rye bread, and sometimes he makes whole wheat bread, and I place my order, please give me this bread today. And he takes care of me, and that's why God exists. No, we should understand. And Kaviraj Goswami goes on to explain. Swayam Bhagavane karma nahi bharaharana sthiti karta Vishnu korena jagat palana bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says, no. You don't understand. That's not why he exists. That's not why your mother exists. Just to wash your clothes and clean up after you and pick up your nonsense and do whatever. That's not why God exists. Don't be so selfish and so foolish. He says, actually, Sthiti Karta, that person who's Srishti Karta, Sthiti Karta, who's creating and maintaining the universe, Vishnu Karana. That's the work of Lord Vishnu. Jagat Palana, he's the one who protects the universe. It's not Krishna. Krishna's too busy. We'll hear about that. Ataiva Vishnu Takana Krishna Ra Sharire Vishnu Dware Kore Krishna Asura Samhare Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare. So when the Lord comes, when Krishna comes, he says, Ata Eva Vishnu Takana means at that time. When Krishna comes, Krishnara Sharire. When you in Bengali grammar, Sharir means body. Amma Sharir Karab. I'm sick. That's how they say I'm sick. It's really cool. My body's broken. Literally, my body's sick. Not that I'm this body. Amma Sharir Karab. But when you say A, we translate it with an E at the end. Amma Sharire means in my body. And here he's saying Krishnara Sharire. That in Krishna's body, Vishnu comes there. Vishnu Dware. He comes through. Vishnu does that. And it's Vishnu who kills all those demons. Krishna's not killing the demons. He's too busy doing something else. And he says, Anusanga karma e asura marana. And this asura marana, this killing of the demons, jelagi avatar. This is not for Krishna. This is work for his avatar, for Vishnu. He says, but now, kahise mula karna, I want to speak about the primary reason for Krishna's appearance. We should understand this. Prema rasa niryasa korite ashvadam ragamara bhakti loke korite pracharan bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rashika Shekara Krishna Parama Karuna dui hetu hoite ichara udgama bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. He says that edui hetu. There's two reasons why the Lord appeared. The first was why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. The first was that prema rasa niryasa, kodite aswadana. Aswadana, he wants to relish. What is that prema rasa niryasa? This is his internal purpose. The external purpose, raga marga bhakti loke kodite prachara. He wants to preach Braj Bhakti. He wants to preach or spread this Raganuga Bhakti. Giving Raganuga Bhakti is the external secondary reason for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. Wrap your head around that. The internal purpose is to taste. And Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, during the period of Lord Krishna's appearance, the killing of asuras or non-believers, such as Kamsa and Jarasandha, this is pretty cool. Asuras means someone who's a non-believer. Such as Kamsa and Jarasandha was done by Vishnu, who was within the person of Sri Krishna. Such apparent killing by Lord Sri Krishna took place as a matter of course and was an incidental activity for him. So again, Nanda Maharaj, he's speaking to Uddhava about how Krishna killed so many demons and things. But it doesn't strike Nanda Maharaj's heart because Nanda Maharaj is an Antaranga Bhakta. He's an internal devotee. Now, Uddhava, I would say he's a Madhyam. He's a Tatashta Bhakta. He's a little bit Antaranga and a little bit Bahiranga. A little internal and a little external. And that's why Krishna wanted to send him to the Braj University of Prem, so he can fix him up in a higher conception. Prabhupada goes on in his purport. Such apparent killing by Lord Sri Krishna took place as a matter of course and was an incidental activity for him, but the real purpose of Lord Krishna's appearance was to stage a dramatic performance of his transcendental pastimes at Braj Bhumi. That's his real purpose. Thus exhibiting the highest limit of transcendental mellow in the exchanges of reciprocal love between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. He wanted to stage a dramatic performance and show the highest limit of transcendental mellows in the exchanges of reciprocal love between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. These reciprocal exchanges of mellows are called Rag Bhakti, or devotional service to the Lord in transcendental rapture. Lord Sri Krishna wants to make known to all the conditioned souls that he is more attracted by Rag Bhakti than Vidhi Bhakti or devotional service under scheduled regulations. It is said in the Vedas, in Taittiriya Upanishad, Raso Vaisaha, the absolute truth is a reservoir for all kinds of reciprocal exchanges of loving sentiments. He is also causelessly merciful, and he wants to bestow upon us this privilege of Rag Bhakti. Thus he appeared by his own internal energy. He was not forced to appear by any extraneous force. And therefore, Krishna's thinking that everybody has this Aishvarya Sitila prema. If they have some prema, it's mixed. They have some love. It's mixed with knowledge of my opulence. He says, but Amare Ishvara Mane Apanake Hina Tara Preme Basa Ami Nahoyi Adina Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Amare Ishvara Mane. If someone is thinking about me, that he's God, and they're thinking of themselves, Apana Kehina, I'm a very low fallen person. I'm the servant of Krishna. I'm just a very insignificant person. Krishna says, Tara Preme Vasa Amina Hai Adina. He says, I'm not very attracted by that. He says that that prema doesn't control me. Basa means to control. It doesn't control me. And nahai adina, I don't become adina, I don't become subservient to that person. Krishna says in the Gita, Yeyatamam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham, that as someone approaches me, I reciprocate accordingly. And Kaviraj Goswami quotes this verse. And in the verse prior to it, Srila Prabhupada comments, beautiful, perfect, listen to this. The Lord, by his inherent nature, reveals himself before his devotees according to their inherent devotional service. Okay? Very extremely important point. How the Lord, how he reciprocates according to the devotee's nature. The Vrindavan pastimes demonstrated that although generally people worship God with reverence, the Lord is more pleased when a devotee thinks of him as his pet son, personal friend, or most dear fiancé, and renders service unto him with such natural affection. So this is Nanda and Yashoda. And this is a meeting of Nanda and Yashoda with Uddhava. Uddhava is coming with all this information about Krishna's opulence, and it doesn't affect them. The Lord becomes, Prabhupada says, the Lord becomes a subordinate object of love. Beautiful language. The Lord becomes a subordinate object of love in such transcendental relationships. Such pure love of Godhead is unadulterated by any tinge of superfluous, non-devotional desires, and is not mixed with any sort of fruit of action or empirical philosophical speculation. Prabhupada's paraphrasing a shloka here. Does anybody know that verse? Anyabilasita shunyam gyana karmadi anabitam anukulyena Krishna shilanam bhakti. He's paraphrasing the first two lines of it. Right? Anyabilasita shunyam. And this Bhakti, Rupa Goswami defines this. This is the 11th verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is one of the most important, this is a mula verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says that Anyabilasita shunyam, there's no nonsense. That's the first thing. Pure bhakti. And Jnana Karma Adi Anabrita. That's a big discussion by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. I won't go there now, but as Prabhupada translates here, or paraphrases here, it's not mixed with any sort of fruit of action or empirical philosophical speculation. It is pure and natural love of Godhead, spontaneously aroused in the absolute stage. This devotional service is executed in a favorable atmosphere, freed from material affection. Our affection is mixed in so many different ways, and therefore the Bhagavatam says, Savai Pumsam Paro Dharma. The Paro Dharma, the real Dharma, means Yato Bhakti Hoksuje, to have love for the Lord. And what is that love? It's defined, it has three characteristics. It's ahoitiki, apratiyata, yayatma suprasiditi. It has no motivation, it's ahoitiki, it's apratiyata, it never stops. And then it fully satisfies the self. And Vishnu comments that Yagatma Suprasiditi means that it's Paramatma Suprasiditi, that it fully satisfies the Lord. Only such love. So, Kaviraj Goswami describes the words of Krishna. Mora Puta, Mora Saka, Mora Pranapati, E Bhave Jay More Kore Shuddha Bhakti. Hello. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Apana ke bhodo mane atma re samahina, se bhave hai amitahara adina bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. He says those devotees who are thinking, Mora Putra, Mora Saka, Mora Pranapati, they're thinking of me like their son. How many religions in the world think of God as your son? But we're all thinking God is my Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We offer this Christian prayer. But here Krishna's saying that when someone is thinking of me as his son, or his drug, his buddy, his good friend, or Mora Pranapati, the Lord of my life, what does that mean? That means a conjugal mala. Then Krishna says that those persons who have that kind of devotion, apanake bodhomani amara samahina, they come and they basically say, apanake bodhomani amare samahina. They consider themselves to be great. Apanake bodhomani, they're big. They have this money, this conception. I'm big. And amare, they thinking of me, samahina, you're just like me. Krishna says, say bhave hai ami tahara adina. When someone thinks like that, I become subordinate to them. This is a very, very big thing. This doesn't mean, this is not something that we can speculate about. This is not something that we can artificially try to practice and criticize Krishna, chastise Krishna the way the gopis do, or tie Krishna up with a rope. But we serve. How do we enter into this? We serve the servants of the servants of the servants of those devotees who are able to do that. Those servants of those devotees who have that kind of love. We want to find those kind of devotees. And we'll serve them according to our position, because that's what love means. Again, to use the example we gave earlier, someone approaches you asking to be your friend. They just walk up to you and say, with a group of other people, they introduce themselves. My name's Fred. By the way, I'm your best friend. I don't know who this guy is. This is weird. You're not my best friend. You can't just artificially claim to be close to someone. And then you say, but I'm real close to Govinda Balda. I saw all their videos. I'm real tight with Govinda. She's my good friend. She's a famous personality. I've seen all of her things on YouTube and that. We're close with her. She's going to say, "What is this? Is weird. This is what you call stalking, right?" Some guy sees some movie star girl and he falls in love with her and he has this image in his mind and he starts trying to follow after her. That's sick. That's weird. Gaudiya Vaishnavism is natural. Bhakti is natural. And being natural means we have to follow according to our position. We aspire for something higher by hearing about it. We aspire for that intimate kind of relationship. But we act according to where we are. This is natural. You don't just show up at a party at the White House and tell them, here I am. He's my buddy in there. No, you can't do that. And maybe if you're lucky, you make some friend with somebody who has some contact there and they bring you. That's guru. And we have to always remember, as Krishna says in the Adi Purana, he tells Arjuna, Ye me bhakta jana parta, na me bhakta sate jadma bhaktanam cha ye bhakta te me bhakta tamamata. The person who says he's my devotee, he's not my devotee. But the devotee of my devotee is my real devotee. So why are we going through all of this discussions about the meeting in Kuruksetra? Why are we hearing about the feelings of the Brijbasis when Krishna left Vrindavan? Why are we hearing about the feelings of Devaki and Vasudeva and Mathura when they see Krishna, and the feelings of the residents of Mathura and why they're crying and asking Krishna to stay? Why are we speaking about what happens when Nanda Maharaj returns to Vrindavan alone? And the Brijbasis, what is their reaction? What is their feelings? What is the feelings of Nanda Maharaj when he meets Uddhava and Uddhava begins speaking to him? Because we want to understand this. This is our goal. And if we don't understand what is our goal, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one place he says that this is one of the anarthas, one of the obstacles, to not understand what is our goal. It doesn't mean that you're a sahajya to read Anjalila Chaitanya Charitamrita, to read Adi Lila chapter 4. They're Prabhupada's books. You're not a sahajya if you read Krishna book and read the Ras Lila in Krishna book. That's rather, you're doing what Srila Prabhupada wants. But what does Srila Prabhupada want? Sometimes devotees have a misunderstanding, and there's a famous story in Los Angeles, which I've heard different perspectives of over the years. Some devotees say that it was blown out of proportion. It wasn't exactly the way it was presented to Srila Prabhupada. but I don't know, I wasn't there. But some devotees were jumping and reading exclusively about Krishna's dealings with the gopis, and Prabhupada became disturbed by that. It's not that I don't think Prabhupada was disturbed by the devotees reading his books. In his last purport in Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says that all the members of this Krishna conscious movement must, he uses the word must read all the books. And he mentions Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavad Gita and others. He says, otherwise they'll simply eat, sleep, and fall down in the position of spiritual life. It's so important. Prabhupada wanted that. So then what was wrong with those devotees? There was something wrong. Prabhupada chastised them. What was wrong was their approach. What was wrong was they were living in a fantasy and thinking themselves more elevated than they actually were. And it's wrong. Just like we give this example. Someone comes to you and says, yeah, you're my best friend. And you've never even met them. It's weird. It's sick. I don't know who you are. Get away from me. I'm going to call the police. And Krishna will do the same thing, too. He'll call Yamaraj. Get this guy away from me. He doesn't belong here. He'll call Maya Devi. He'll distract you through Maya Devi. So we should act what's in a natural way. And sahaja means natural. And it's that we don't want to become sahaja in the sense that we imagine something which is not ours, but we want to practice bhakti in a natural way, according to our position. And we're so bad, we don't even know what that natural position is. And therefore we need Gurudev. We need a doctor to tell us, you have a fever. You have this disease, and therefore here's some medicine for you. And the medicine for one person is not the same for another person. My Guru Maharaj gave me personal instructions about the worship of our Giriraj. He gave me Giriraj. He gave me personal instructions about it. And later, one of my godbrothers, who also was worshiping Giriraj, he had different instructions from Guru Maharaj, completely different, how to worship Giriraj. And he approached Guru Maharaj and said, Guru Maharaj, I really like the way Madhavananda does it. And Guru Maharaj chastised him. He said, no, that was for him. And I gave you a particular instruction. So Guru is Sadhu Vaidya. He's a sadhu doctor. He knows what's needed for the particular patient, because our sickness, our bhava roga is so bad, our material disease, we don't even know who I am. And over Sanatana Goswami, when he approaches Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the first thing he says is, Kayami, I don't know who I am. He didn't go to him and say, hey, there you are, man, long time no see, my good friend. He didn't. He went and said, Kayami, I don't even know who I am. We speak about this sometimes, the fallacy of these three words, this Maha Mantra for the people in the material world. The three-word Maha Mantra, I love you. There's so many, it's fallacious because, first of all, you don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. And so how can I say I? The next problem is, I don't know what love is. Third problem is, I don't know who you are. So I love you really means nothing. But we want to love someone. So the first thing is I have to understand who I am. Then I understand what love is. And then I can understand you. I can understand Krishna. So we're going to go ahead and stop there. I want to thank all the devotees online for taking part. Let's just see, Roma Wani, Hare Krishna, nice to see you here. And Leela Avatar, Mataji, nice to see you. She's in, where is she now, Leela Avatar? Somebody said in Dallas or something? Sorry?
USA, I guess.
Where?
USA?
Yeah, Dallas is in the USA. Yeah. And Mahendra Prabhu and Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji, and Sushant Prabhu, Ananta Prabhu, and Aveen, Vaishnavi Bina, and Anavajangi Mataji from Reno, Nevada, my mother. She's watching. Subal Sham Prabhu is there. Nice to see you. Brajabanita in Israel is there. Zootberger is there. Bajendu Kumar Prabhu is there. Hare Krishna. Someone, strange person, someone named Anapani Radha Devi Dasi is watching. Someone named Brenda Sundari in a place called Denver, Colorado. And Lisa's there, and Shanti. Thank you all for taking part. If anybody has any reflections or comments, Shamananda Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Anybody has any reflections or questions, comments, please, this is the time for that. Anapani Radha, she says, wow, with an exclamation mark. She says, oops, I lost her comment. She says, quote, the real purpose of Lord the Lord's appearance was to stage a dramatic performance of his transcendental pastimes at Braj Bhumi, thus exhibiting the highest limit of transcendental mellow in the exchanges of reciprocal love between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. She's quoting Prabhupada. She says, wow. And she goes on, we must try to observe this dramatic performance very carefully and attentively. Thank you, it's so beautiful. And even more than that, he appears as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to show a practical example. Brinda Sundari, from a distant place called Denver, Colorado, she comments, it's enriching hearing about the dynamic experience of the devotees, Nanda Maharaj, etc., and how Krishna fulfills his promises with them in ways that baffle them. And some strange lady here named Anna Payani Radha says, my pranams to all the devotees. And Ananta Prabhu says, it's so nice to wake up early with your class. Nice to see you, Ananta Prabhu. Ananta's actually in Mayapur, Basi. The last time we saw him was here in Mayapur, Swedish Ananta Prabhu. So I'm going to flip around now, and you can see the beautiful faces of all the exalted devotees here. Okay? Daiva Singha Prabhu, you have some comment, some objection or something?
When you said that they were, regarding that those devotees, that they were living in the fantasy and thinking themselves more advanced than they are.
And say that again?
In regards to the devotees reading the Prabhupada books and then...
Thinking they're more advanced than they were.
So what do you mean by the fantasy in that way? So, I mean, sometimes we feel some reciprocation with the deities and sometimes we feel some... So is that a fantasy? Is it a fantasy to, I mean, I'm just asking, what is the fantasy exactly like?
Okay.
In regards to, in light of the reciprocation with the deities, devotees, and some reflections which come in.
Okay. And we all have some reciprocation. We all have some reciprocation of the deities and the devotees and the deities. To some extent or another, they came to us, right? But this ahankar is so deep in us that even when we begin to practice bhakti, we're doing this thing and there's some reciprocation, but still we're thinking I'm the most important person. And we're still having this false ego that now it's just been replaced with instead before, I'm the supreme enjoyer. And that the purpose of life is to eat nice food and be with boys and girls and enjoy in whatever way. But now I'm replacing that I'm going to enjoy with some pratishta, or some position with the devotees. I'm so advanced. And we're thinking like it. Sometimes we even convince ourselves that I'm such an advanced devotee. I had this dream, this thing happened, the deity winked at me. I've had people tell me a lot of funny things sometimes, and devotees really believe that. That ahankar is still there. Anybody else with anything?
Like a deity worship is very formal, like a Srila Prabhupada instructs us to worship deity in a very formal way. And at the same time, Krishna is not very pleased with in a very formal way.
Right.
So in what point that kind of melt or...
Okay, very good question. Thank you. Flip this around again. So, first question comes, why did Srila Prabhupada do that? He's writing here in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna doesn't want this kind of thing, but then why did he insist? Why did he tell the pujaris that our worship of Radha Krishna is like worship of Lakshmi Narayan? He writes that in the second canto of Bhagavatam. Why does Prabhupada do that? It's not the purpose of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada, by the way, never ever established deities of Lakshmi Narayan. So there's a kind of natural tension there, isn't there? When we're being told that because you're not advanced enough, you have to follow all these rules and regulations very strictly, but at the same time you're supposed to read the books, and when you read the books say that Krishna's bored with that kind of love. He's not very interested in that. And maybe he becomes bored stiff, he becomes a deity with that kind of expression of love. Prabhupada says that Krishna will talk to you, Krishna will speak to you. And we're hearing this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this creates a kind of dynamic tension in the heart, which we shouldn't avoid. We should be honest about our position. My Guru Maharaj used to say, your only qualification is your disqualification. To understand our fallen position and to cry and feel bad about that. And so this helps us this kind of tension helps like that. Is that all right? But you had something? Flip this around. Go ahead.
You mentioned that to give this Braja Prema Bhakti, Krishna disappeared from Brajvasis, so that is for the welfare of all the conditioned souls. That is why it's Namo Mahavatendaya Chaitanya. I like how he linked Krishna's disappearance with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. But from the perspective of Brajvasis,
speak loud. I think the voice may have a hard time hearing.
But from the perspective of Brajvasis, how does it help them when Krishna is leaving Braj?
Well, that's the point of this whole long discussion about meeting in Kuruksetra. What is the benefit? What is the purpose of Krishna's leaving Vrindavan? This is a great mystery of Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's done for a number of reasons. To cite a few, to increase the intensity of their love, to broadcast the nature of their love, and to show that love to others so that they can also get it. Persons like Uddhava, and persons like we'll hear later, the Mahishis, the queens in Dwarka, who met the gopis in Kuruksetra. It's for preaching in that sense. Brajeti Prachar, as is said in the song Jai Radhe Jai Krishna Jai Vrindavan, Brajeti Prachar. This is a preaching of Braj. You have something, Vrindavan?
Thank you so much for your class. Beautiful. Wonderful. And I just wanted to mention just how you said that the preaching has a bad connotation. Just the word external can also have a bad connotation.
What?
Like
External?
The word external.
Yes.
Maybe superficial, but it's not.
Yes, thank you.
External reasons.
When we say when we translate Bahiranga Karan as the external cause for Mahaprabhu, it's not such a good translation in English because the language is difficult. It's hard to say anything else. But when you say external means something lesser, something annoying, something which is in the way. It's not primary. But here, Bahiranga just means it's a Bahiranga. It's part of the body. But it's a Bahiranga. It's one of the external limbs. Thank you very much. Krishna, could you have something?
To what Govinda Baba just brought up, I like Damodar Maharaj's definition for external, in this case, meaning for others, and internal for himself. Because it just seems giving Krishna prema for others.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. Grandadai Srimad Bhagavatam, Jai Srimad. Our next session on Sunday is going to be at the Nandi Sanctuary, the Goshala. Same time, different place with the cows. So please come. Grandadai Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai.